Sophie was 65 years old, a retired school teacher who had spent her life raising her only child, Dara, with discipline, love, and endless hope. Since her husband passed away when Dara was only 9, Sophie poured her life into raising her boy to be kind, respectful, and strong. And he was all of those things, and more. Dara, now 38, was a talented cook who had worked in various restaurants in Phnom Penh. He had passion, skill, and a quiet heart. But he had never married. Sophie often lay awake at night, whispering prayers that her son would find a good woman to settle down with. She wasn't getting any younger, and the thought of Dara growing old alone pained her. So she tried matchmaking. Once with a family friend's niece who worked in a bank. Another time with a nurse who came highly recommended. And finally, with a sweet kindergarten teacher. But Dara said no, no, and no. May, please. Dara finally told her one night after their third argument over it. Stop. Just let me be. If I'm meant to meet someone, it will happen. Sophie's eyes welled up. I just want you to be happy. I am happy, he said. But his eyes looked tired. She knew he wasn't. Dara had been in love before. Years ago, he fell hard for a woman who worked in a bakery. They dated for over a year. He dreamed of marrying her. But she left him for another man. One who had more money, a car, and a future she thought Dara couldn't offer. That heartbreak cut deep, and Dara never quite healed. In 2021, Dara took a vacation with his close friends to Battambang. It was meant to be a break, just countryside, food, and fresh air. No expectations, but fate had other plans. While dining at a local food stall near Wat Banan, Dara met Neri, a 28-year-old woman with sparkling eyes and a laugh that made everything around her seem lighter. She served them grilled fish and soup and cracked jokes with ease. There was something about her, a mix of warmth and honesty perhaps, that caught Dara off guard. She wasn't just pretty. She was kind. She asked questions about him, remembered the little things, brought extra rice without asking. Over the next few days, they kept running into each other. Her smile became familiar. A quiet friendship blossomed, then a hesitant romance. When Dara brought her back to Phnom Penh to meet his mother, Sophie was surprised. But Neri was polite, knew how to cook, spoke gently, and showed great care. She even helped in the kitchen. Sophie was impressed. By 2022, they were married. In 2023, they had a son, little Vanak. Sophie thought her prayers had finally been answered. But life has its own bitter turns. In 2024, Neri began working at a hotel in the city. At first, Sophie was proud. But within months, everything began to shift. Neri changed. She started going out after work, first once a week, then almost every other night. She claimed she was just relaxing, meeting new colleagues, especially foreigners. She works hard, Dara said at first, trying to trust her. She deserves some time, but the changes were undeniable. She grew distant at home, snapped at Dara often, ignored little Vanak when he cried. Sometimes she left the child at Sophie's house unannounced, saying, "You love your grandson so much anyway, right?" Dara worked long hours at a restaurant, returning home late, only to find Neri hadn't cooked, hadn't cleaned, hadn't even come home. Night. Sophie heard her grandson crying and walked in to find a red mark on his arm. He had said, "Mommy pushed me." When Sophie confronted Neri, her daughter-in-law rolled her eyes. "I'm not perfect, okay? I'm tired too. Why is everything always my fault? You have a husband who works all day." Sophie replied, "You have a mother-in-law who takes care of your child. What else do you want?" "I want a life," Neri shouted. "I'm young. I didn't marry to become a maid." Sophie felt her heart tear in two. That night, Dara and Sophie sat in silence. He looked defeated. "She's changed," he whispered. "This isn't the woman I met in Battambang." Sophie gently touched her son's arm. "I know." In 2025, Neri began staying out for whole nights. Rumors reached them. White men from her workplace, drinking together, flirting openly. even one man seen dropping her off late at night. Dara confronted her, tears in his eyes. "What's happening to us? We have a son, a home." Neri laughed bitterly. "You're too traditional. You and your mother both. Maybe I made a mistake marrying you." Dara said nothing, but something inside him shattered. Weeks later, Neri packed a small bag and left. No warning, no apology, just a message. "I need time for myself. Don't wait for me." She returned a week later, took some clothes, and left again. She still hadn't asked about her son. Dara, now 42, wakes up every morning and prepares his son's school lunch before heading to the restaurant. Sophie, older and slower, still finds energy to care for Vanek, who calls her Maymay. She watches her son closely, how he hides his pain behind silence, how he forces a smile for his boy, how he keeps waiting for someone who has already let go. And every night, Sophie whispers new prayers, not for a wife anymore, but for Dara's peace and for Vanek's future. Because sometimes, the only dream left is that your child survives the heartbreak and still believes in love. 3 months after she walked out, Neri returned. She looked thinner, her skin pale, her eyes hollow. She wasn't the bright woman who once made Dara laugh in Batumbang. She barely resembled the mother of his child. She stood outside their small house, clutching a plastic bag of her belongings, while Sophie stood frozen in the doorway. Anak, only 2 years old, toddled behind his grandmother, unsure whether to smile or hide. Dara came home from work that evening, saw her sitting on the wooden bench outside the house, and stopped in his tracks. Neri looked up at him and whispered, "Can I come in?" Sophie said nothing. She walked into the house, picked up Vanek, and closed the door behind her, leaving them outside in silence. Neri didn't lie this time. Her voice shook as she confessed, "I've made mistakes. I've been sick. I had to get tested." Dara stared at her, his throat tight. "I'm HIV positive," she whispered. "I didn't know until last month. I think it happened after I left. I didn't protect myself. I wasn't thinking." The words hit him like a punch to the chest. His first thought was of their son. His second, of how love had somehow led him here. "I'm sorry," she cried. "I'm scared. I don't have anywhere else to go. My family doesn't want me. They said I brought shame." He wanted to scream, to yell at her for everything. The lies, betrayal, coldness, nights she didn't come home. But instead, he asked the only thing he truly needed to know. "Did you ever?" "No," she said quickly. "Never with you. I swear. I tested too late. You should check yourself." "And Vanek, please." Dara stood still in the dark, breathing heavily. 1,000 emotions tangled in his chest. Rage, fear, sadness, confusion. But when she reached toward him, he pulled back. Next week was a blur of blood tests and waiting. Thankfully, Dara and little Vanek were both negative. The doctor told them Neri's viral load was high, but she had started treatment. She could live with the condition if she took medication consistently. Still, everything changed. Neri wasn't the same. Her emotions swung like a pendulum. Crying, apologizing, then going silent for hours. She began sleeping in the small guest room, no longer beside Dara. She rarely touched Vanek, as if afraid of hurting him or being rejected by him. Sophie resented her, not because of her sickness, but because of the damage she'd done before it. But for the sake of her grandson, she kept her tongue still. One day, Sophie found Neri in the kitchen looking lost. She said, "You still have a home here, but only because of your son." Neri nodded, saying nothing. Time passed. Dara carried the household now, not just financially, but emotionally. Neri helped occasionally, but often disappeared into herself. She didn't talk much. She went to her hospital appointments alone. Sometimes she skipped meals. Sometimes she stared at the wall for hours. Once Sophie found her crying in the bathroom. The young woman said, "I ruined everything. I ruined him. I'm not a wife anymore. I'm not even a mother." Sophie, moved by something deeper than anger, replied softly, "Then fix what you can. Be a mother. That boy still needs one." Dara watched from a distance. He didn't trust her, but he didn't hate her either. He pitied her. Some nights, he lay awake and wondered if love always had to come with pain. When people in the neighborhood whispered, Sophie defended her family with steel in her voice. "It's our burden, not yours," she said. "God will judge her, not you." By mid-2025, Neri was stable on medication. She began cooking again, slowly trying to reconnect with Vanek. But the boy was distant. He ran to his grandmother for comfort. Dara said little. He worked longer hours, trying to forget that his life had become a shadow of the dream he once carried. An evening, as the monsoon rains poured outside, Dara sat at the edge of the bed and whispered to Sophie, "I stay because of my son, not because I still love her." Sophie reached over, aged hands wrapping around his. "I know," she said, "but even broken love can still protect a child." Neri never fully returned to the woman she was. She would sometimes laugh with Vanek, help cook, even sing softly while folding clothes. But something in her had died. As for Dara, he moved forward, not with hope, but with duty. Not with love, but with quiet strength. And Sophie, though her heart was heavy, was proud of her son, because even in pain, he chose to be a father. Even in betrayal, he chose to protect. And even when love failed, he stood tall, for the sake of his child. His story teaches us that love isn't always easy, and people change, sometimes in painful ways. But strength lies in staying true to your values, protecting your family, and rising above heartbreak. Even when life feels unfair, kindness and responsibility matter. Let your scars make you wiser, not bitter. And never forget, your child learns love by watching you live it. Thank you very much for watching.